Your focus does not break while you are working. It breaks in the 3 seconds after you stop. That is the whole problem, and almost nobody is looking at it. The samurai had a word for the thing you are missing: zanshin. It translates roughly as the remaining mind, and it is the single most practical concept in Japanese martial philosophy that never made it into modern productivity advice. By the end of this, you will know what zanshin is, the 4 specific things that destroy it, and exactly how to train it in ordinary life. No app, no system to buy. 4 ideas that are about 400 years old. One of those 4, the third one, is the one you are going to argue with me about. I know that in advance. We will get there. And there is a part of the training itself that is genuinely unpleasant, not difficult. Unpleasant, in a specific way that catches people off guard. I will tell you near the end, because I do not think you will believe it until you have felt it. Start with what zanshin actually means. Picture a wooden hall in Japan, polished floor. A man in dark hakama, bow drawn, absolutely still. In kyudo, Japanese archery, one shot is broken into 8 stages: stance, bow readied, raised, drawn, held, released. Most people assume the shot ends there. The arrow has left. It is gone. Nothing he does now can change where it lands. It does not end there. The 8th stage is zanshin. After the release, he holds the finished position. Arms still open, chest still turned, eyes still on the target, breathing unbroken, sometimes for several seconds. Nothing is happening. The arrow has already hit or already missed. The hall is silent, and he holds. That stage is not optional. In formal practice, an archer who drops his posture the instant the arrow leaves has performed the shot incorrectly, even if it struck the center. Think about how strange that is. You can hit the target and still fail. And there is something in it I find genuinely sad the first time you see it. Sometimes the arrow misses, badly. Everyone in the hall watched it miss. The archer holds the position anyway, open, exposed, eyes forward for 3 full seconds, in front of everybody, around a failure that is already finished. Nobody applauds that. It is the least rewarded moment in the entire discipline. It is also the only part that is really being trained, because what is being trained is not the shot. It is what the mind does once the shot is over. Now bring that into your day. You finish a task, you send the email, you close the document, you finish the call. What happens in the next 3 seconds? For most people, the answer is total collapse. The phone comes out, a tab opens. You check something. You stand up with no destination. That gap feels like nothing. It feels like a break you have earned. It is the most expensive 3 seconds in your working day. Here is why, and this is where the research is genuinely brutal. A study led by Gloria Mark at the University of California, Irvine followed office workers with stopwatches. After an interruption, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return fully to the original task. 23 minutes from one interruption, and you are not being interrupted once. Most people switch context dozens of times a day, and a large share of those switches are self-inflicted in exactly the gap we are talking about. There is a second finding, and it is worse. The researcher Sophie Leroy described something she called attention residue. When you move from one task to another, part of your attention stays behind on the first. You are not fully on the second thing. Part of your mind is still standing in the last room, and you cannot feel it happening. That last part is what makes this so hard to catch. There is no sensation. Nothing hurts. You simply produce worse work all afternoon and assume you were tired. So the picture is this. You did not lose your focus because you were weak during the work. You lost it in the doorway between 2 pieces of work and then paid for it for the next 20 minutes. Zanshin is the discipline of not collapsing in the doorway. Let me make this concrete, because an idea that stays an idea changes nothing. Take someone we will call Kenji. 31. Not lazy. Genuinely trying. Kenji tracked his day for 1 week with a timer. Not what he intended to do, what actually happened. 9 hours at his desk, 3 hours and 10 minutes of real focused work, 4 hours and 40 minutes of what he wrote down as transition, opening things, checking things, standing up, coming back. Read those two numbers again. He spent more of his day in the doorways than in the rooms. Kenji did not have a focus problem. He could concentrate perfectly well for long stretches on difficult things. He had no training for the moment concentration ended, so it ended 40 or 50 times a day and cost him 20 minutes each time. That is not a character flaw. It is an untrained skill, and nobody had ever told him it was a skill. If this has landed, press the like button. It decides whether this reaches anyone else. It takes a second, and most people mean to, and then forget. Do it before we go on to the 4. Because the samurai were extremely specific about what destroys the remaining mind. And they were not theorizing. Think about what a list like this actually was. 4 ways they had watched men die, written down so that the next generation would recognize the feeling early enough to do something about it. In classical kendo, there is a set of 4 faults called the shikai, the 4 sicknesses. They are not 4 bad habits. They are 4 states of mind that make you lose, and every one of them shows up in your working day wearing modern clothes. The first sickness is kyudo, surprise, not fear, surprise. The jolt when something arrives you did not expect, a message, a name in a subject line, a sound. Surprise is dangerous because it moves faster than judgment. Before you have decided whether a thing matters, your attention is already on it. The modern form is obvious. Every notification you receive is engineered to produce kyudo, not to inform you, to startle you, because a startled person looks. The counter in kendo is not to be braver. It is to remove the conditions for surprise. A swordsman does not train to be unshocked. He trains so that fewer things are unexpected. For you, that is unglamorous, and it works. Notifications off. Phone in another room, not face down on the desk. And there is a finding here that people genuinely hate. A team led by Adrian Ward at the University of Texas ran an experiment where people took attention tests with their phone face down on the desk, or in a bag, or in another room. Performance fell in a straight line with distance. The phones were silent the entire time. A phone does not need to buzz to cost you. It is not the interruption. It is the part of you that is waiting for one. The second sickness is Q, fear. In a duel, fear is specific, not terror. It is the small hesitation that arrives the moment you become aware this could go badly. In your day, it is the task you keep not starting. Think about which one it is. You knew which one before I finished the sentence, and that speed is the whole point. Watch yourself for one afternoon. You are not avoiding hard work in general. You are avoiding one particular item, and every time your attention lands near it, you flinch to something else. That flinch is what breaks a working session, not the difficulty of the work, the flinch. Musashi's answer, written in the Dokodo a week before he died, is one line: do not fear death. He meant something broader than dying. Decide in advance what you are willing to lose, and the hesitation has nothing left to feed on. Practically, name the task you are avoiding. Write it down in actual words. Do it first, before anything easier is available. Fear that has been named out loud is much smaller than fear left vague. The third sickness is GI, doubt. This is the one I told you we would argue about. Doubt is the fault that looks most like intelligence. It is the voice in the middle of a task asking whether this is the right task, whether there is a better method, whether you should restart. It does not feel like distraction. It feels like being careful. It feels responsible. That is exactly what makes it expensive. You will defend it. Some of you are defending it right now while I am saying this. So which is it in the middle of a difficult task, when the thought arrives that there might be a better way to do this? Are you being careful, or are you leaving? In a duel, doubt is fatal because the decision was supposed to be made before the encounter began. A swordsman still choosing a technique mid-exchange has already lost. The choosing was meant to happen in advance. Same for your day. If you are deciding what to work on while you are working, you are not working. The counter is to move all the deciding into one moment. Decide the night before. 3 items, in order, written down. Then during the day, you are not allowed to reconsider. Not because reconsidering is always wrong, because you are the worst possible judge of your own plan at 2 in the afternoon on a hard day. The 4th one does not work like the others. Waku, confusion. The first 3 are things that happen to you. Waku is what is left over after all 3 have been running unchecked since 9 in the morning. You are not tired. You are not busy. You are full of unfinished things, and every one of them has a tension residue attached to it. Picture the end of one of those days. Nothing on the list is crossed off. You were at the desk the whole time, and you could not tell anyone what you actually did. The classical counter is heijoshin, the everyday mind. The steady, ordinary state a swordsman is supposed to be able to. Empty your head onto paper. Every open item, however small. Then, choose one. The confusion was never caused by having too much to do. It was caused by holding it all in a place that cannot hold it. Now, how you actually train zanshin, because knowing 4 Japanese words changes nothing. There is one exercise. It takes 3 seconds. When you finish a task, do not move. Stay where you are. Hands still, eyes still. Do not reach for anything. 3 seconds. That is it. That is the entire practice. It sounds like nothing at all. It is precisely what the archer is doing at stage 8, and it trains the same thing. The ability to stay present in the moment after the action instead of scattering the second the pressure comes off. Do it 40 times a day, and you have spent 2 minutes. Kenji ran it for 3 weeks. His transition time went from 4 hours and 40 minutes to just under 2 hours. He did not become more disciplined. He stopped bleeding out in the doorways. And now the part I promised you. The 3 seconds are uncomfortable, not hard, uncomfortable. You will feel a strong pull to reach for something, and when you look at that pull closely, it is not about the phone at all. It is about not wanting to be alone with a finished thing. There is a small silence after work ends, where the only thing available is your own verdict on what you just did. Most people have never once sat in it. What surfaces there is usually some quiet judgment about whether the thing was any good, and people are more afraid of that than they have ever admitted. The reaching is not laziness, it is fear, moving faster than thought, 40 times a day, for years. That discomfort is the whole training. It is the same discomfort the archer sits in while the arrow is already gone, and there is nothing left to do but hold. Let me be honest about the limits of this. Zanshin is not a productivity technique. It was never designed as one. It comes from a context where losing attention after a strike meant dying, and I am applying it to answering emails. That is a translation, and translations lose things. I also cannot tell you that 3 seconds of stillness will fix a job that is genuinely too big for one person, or a life with no slack in it. It will not. Some focus problems are workload problems wearing a costume, but the mechanism is real. The research on switch costs is solid, and the practice costs nothing and needs no equipment. So here's what I would like you to take from a wooden hall and a man holding a bow at nothing. You have been trying to become more disciplined during the work. That was never where you were losing. You were losing in the small invisible moment when the work stopped, when nobody was watching and nothing was required of you and it felt like the day had paused. The samurai understood that the moment after the technique is part of the technique, that the shot is not finished when the arrow lands, that the mind which remains is the one deciding what your next hour looks like. There is something worth being proud of in holding a position nobody is applauding. It is a small, unwitnessed kind of discipline, and it is available to you about 40 times today. Most people are excellent at starting. A few are good at finishing. Almost nobody has trained for the 3 seconds after. That is the gap, and now you know it is there.